One of the things that I get asked about quite frequently are questions about proof marks, proof sizes, barrel thicknesses, choke configurations and so on. So I thought I'd just spend a few minutes and go through the basics of proof marks and barrel thicknesses and so on. The majority of this only really relates to side-by-sides. Over and unders that have been made in the last 15 or 20 years, machine-made, really you have to worry about the proof marks, but it is very, very rare that they will change. With English guns, some of which are 100 years old plus, 100 years ago they didn't have barrel thickness gauges or bore size gauges. Everything was done by hand. So a lot of the times they were guessing to barrel thicknesses and so on. The whole of the history of a side-by-side you can tell by the proof marks. The proof marks are stamped on the barrels there, and they will tell you the whole history of the gun, how it was made, when it was made, specifications, chamber sizes, and so on. So the history of, of an English gun is always on those flats. So the proof marks on this gun are, it was made at 729, which is the nominal bore size. Okay, it's nitro-proof. It's a 12 bore. It has 2 3/4 inch chambers, and it was pressure tested to 3¼ tons. So it tells you about everything about how this gun was built. The proof rules have been changed probably 8 or 9 times in the last 100 years. So even experts have to check to make sure they're right and so on. In 1980, we joined the CIP, which is the European proof laws. So the rules were changed then in 1984. They were then amended in 1986, and they were amended again in 1989. So you really need to make sure that what you're looking at is what you're seeing. But basically, this gun was proved at 729, and 729 is the size of the inside of the tube, and we measure it with something like that, which is an internal bore gauge. This you set up before you start on something like that, which is a jig to make sure that it's measuring correctly. Proof marks are always measured 9 inches from the breech, and there's a mark on your gauge there. So if I want to see that this gun is in proof, I put that into there, 9 inches from the breech. We then turn that round there, and it measures 720, 730. Now, these proof marks have got 10th hour allowance. So if that is measuring, if that was proved at 729, it would go out of proof at 740. So that one there measures 730, which is just about what the gun was made at. And that measures exactly the same. So it's fairly safe to assume that gun is probably about 40 years old. So it's fairly safe to assume that the measurements of those barrels are exactly the way the gun was made. So they're fine. One of the things that I spoke about was barrel thicknesses. Generally, it's considered that under 20 thou thick, the barrels are too thin to withstand the pressure of a cartridge. When a gun goes in to be proved to proof house, they put about 5 tons of pressure into the gun to try and blow the barrels up. The average cartridge is generating probably about 3.5 tons of pressure. So the proof master's job is to make sure that that gun is safe enough for you to shoot. And the last thing you want to do, put a cartridge in it, pull the trigger, and it takes your hand off. So the proof master's job is to make sure that these guns are safe to shoot. It was generally accepted a few years ago that because English guns are made of best quality materials, the minimum thickness that is allowed or is recommended, shall we say, is 20 thou. So we always measure up English guns to make sure they are more than 20 thou thick. When you measure barrel thicknesses, you need a machine like this. And what you do, you zero that, so you'll see that there is a gauge on the top. And you make sure that's on 0. So then you measure it up. And you do that by going through. Now, what you are looking for is the thinnest part of the barrel. The further this way, nearer you get to the chambers, the thicker the barrel will be. The further away from the chambers you are, the thinner the barrel will be. So what we do, we measure it up. Right, so that is about the thinnest part I can find, and that is 29 thou thick. So that is plenty thick enough. Now we look at the other barrel. Oh, so the other barrel is thinner there. Right, so the thinnest part I can find on that barrel is just about here, which is 24 thou thick. So again, plenty thick enough. Again, when this gun was made, this is Charles Lancaster, probably about 100 years old. When the barrel maker made these barrels, he made them by guesstimate. They didn't have barrel thickness gauges like this. So again, they will always vary. People sort of, experts in English guns often say, oh, they're different. Of course they're different. They were made by hand. With English guns, a lot of them are 100 years old. They could have been damaged. You get out of a shoot bus and you bang the barrel on the side of the game cart and you get a dent in it. Well, that dent then has to be taken out. So the barrel maker will then raise that dent, he'll take that out, and then they use a little tiny hammer to tap it up to make it the same as the rest of the barrel. Well, once they've done that, they then fire off those hammer marks before they reback the barrel. And they call that striking the barrel up. Also, if guns are not looked after, they tend to get a little bit rusty on the inside. So then the barrel maker will just lap out the rust, the pits, but again, which makes the barrel thinner.